So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining the presentation today. And because others are unable to join due to the time conflicts, so I will present Sukanya, Jewsakul, and Edith Ngai to present our work, FioRa energy neutrality-aware multicast firmware distributions in energy harvesting LoRa networks. Energy harvesting systems power sensors by collecting energy from sources like sunlight and the bubble light, and this energy is managed and stored to power the sensors, network interface, microcontroller, and sensors. And this setup is ideal for remote IoT devices, but also introduce unique challenges. And sensors in these networks need firmware updates to maintain functionality and security, which is challenging for sensors that rely on harvested energies like the solar power. For example, there are temporary power failures in energy harvesting systems because energy sources like sunlight vary by location and time, and the energy storage capacity is limited. However, the firmware update is an energy-intensive task. These failures make energy-intensive tasks like firmware update difficult to assess. And LoRa networks traditionally use multicast to efficiently distribute firmware. This approach works well for battery-powered devices, but isn't designed for energy harvesting sensors that experience frequent power interruptions. For example, in energy harvesting LoRa networks, the devices usually have different energy levels. And when receiving firmware packages, some devices with low energy levels may shut down intermittently. The power shortage can lead to missed firmware packages. And also, poor communication channels or communication failure can also lead to package loss. In the figure, it leads to the package number 5 being lost in that device. And the devices did not receive the full firmware data successfully due to power and communication failures. So the lost firmware data needs to be resent to the IoT devices. And it can increase the distribution time and overhead. Motivated by these challenges, our objectives are to minimize the firmware distribution overhead by enabling energy-neutral operation and the completion time of firmware update by using high data rates for firmware distributions. Peer research have explored over the AI programming for IoT, focusing on reducing the data size, dealing with packet loss, and using embedded machine learning model for efficiency. However, energy-efficient firmware updates in the energy-harvested LoRa networks remains a challenge. And to achieve energy neutrality-aware filter using high DRs, we face 3 key challenges. First, we should ensure that all sensors are covered by multicast firmware distributions. And second, the server should obtain accurate energy availability information of sensors at low cost. And third, the server should determine configurations that ensure firmware distribution coverage and maximize data reception rate in an energy-neutral manner. And to address these challenges, we developed FioRa. It includes an on-demand relay mechanism, one-hop neighbor discovery mechanism, energy query mechanism, and a multicast session management algorithm. FioRa's operation flow starts with neighbor discovery and energy queries. Based on the one-hop neighbor information and the energy availability information, the server decides on a relay-enabled or traditional multicast configuration. This dynamic setup adapts to each sensor's energy state for optimal update coverage. Before each multicast session, FioRa sends an energy query to each sensor to assess its power, and this helps the server schedule updates efficiently, minimizing interruptions due to power shortage. The one-home neighbor discovery mechanism is built on the concept of energy neutrality-aware multicast firmware distribution. It's performed once at the time of deployment or when new devices are added. And to instruct which sensor to broadcast their IDs, the server sends control message like the slot index to the selected sensors after receiving energy and multicast session responses. Session duration is allocated time for each individual firmware distribution sensor. It allows energy harvesting devices to receive firmware updates in manageable segments and helping them conserve energy and avoid shutdowns during the update process. In the on-demand relay mechanism, it enables two-hop multicast firmware distributions from the gateway. The server selects sensors with sufficient energy to relay data. This ensures that all energy harvesting LoRa sensors, even though far from the server, can receive firmware data effectively. FioRa's session management algorithm runs in two steps. First, it will determine which data rates offer full coverage of multicast firmware distributions, and it will pair out of range each LoRa sensors with relay sensors offering the highest data reception rates. And this approach optimizes data reception rates and minimizes session time, ensuring efficient distributions. The algorithm runs until being coverage, meaning that the pairs of out-of-range and relay sensors are stable, and the server selects configurations with the highest data reception rates for multicast firmware distributions. And server also sends the instruction message to the relay sessions after receiving the multicast session responses. FioRa was evaluated based on simulation. In the simulation setup, the indoor solar EH datasets was modified and divided into smaller datasets of 135 days each. And we used the divided dataset to model a network of 20 each LoRa sensors. The power profile of each LoRa sensor followed an off-the-shelf LoRa device. The firmware distributions were scheduled during the daytime until all each LoRa sensor sufficiently received the firmware data. And for each multicast session, the server distributed the firmware data for 1 hour at most. We demonstrate the performance of FioRa with multiple baselines. The FioRa with embedded machine learning predictions, FioRa with actual future harvested energy, and FioRa variant where firmware data are distributed in an energy-neutral manner according to the actual future harvested energy without enabling a relay mechanism, and the traditional LoRa network without energy knowledge. And the performance metrics include the successful rate and completion time, distribution overhead, number of multicast sessions, distribution duration, and traffic overhead. We can find that as shown on the left of figure, both FioRa variants and ENO offer higher success rates compared to the traditional LoRa network. And the EH LoRa sensors implementing FioRa variants complete the multicast firmware distributions faster than the ENO and the LoRaWAN. As illustrated on the left of this figure, FioRa variants employ less multicast sessions to complete distributing varied size of firmware image compared to the LoRaWAN and the ENO. And the right of figure shows that Due to the use of high data rates, FioRa variants offer shorter distribution duration. And the left of this figure shows that the traditional LoRa 1 exhibits the highest firmware distribution overhead when compared to both FioRa variants and ENO. And the right of this figure exhibits the traffic overhead of FioRa variants, ENO and LoRa 1. Although both FioRa variants and ENO introduce additional traffic related to energy queries and one-hop neighbor discovery to each LoRa networks, the transmission overhead is negligible when comparing with traditional firmware distribution overhead that can be reduced. So, in conclusion, FioRa provides a novel energy-neutral framework for multicast firmware updates in each LoRa networks. And our method minimizes the completion time of firmware updates and the overhead of firmware distributions. The proposed one-hop neighbor discovery and the relay mechanisms ensure that multicast firmware distributions performed using high data rates can reach all each LoRa sensors in the multicast groups. And the experimental results show that the distribution time of firmware image is minimized by up to 17 times, and the overhead of firmware distributions is reduced by up to 7 times. So this is the end of my presentation. Thank you for your attention. And you can ask me questions if you have any, but because I'm not the author of this paper, so I may not able to answer many of your questions in detail. You may direct the email the author. Yes, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ethan.
Thank you.
Yeah, we have definitely time for questions, but as she just mentioned, she's not the author, so don't give too many hard questions. I do have one while people are preparing for their own. Primarily it's about the one-hop neighbor discovery. I know you're not the author, but I wonder does that get affected if the sensor is placed in an asset that can be moved? Does this neighbor discovery works only in static sensors, meaning the sensors are placed once and never moved?
I think the sensors can be moved because one-hop discovery algorithm, from my understanding, it should depends on the overhead between the sensor and its neighborhood. So if the overhead is still within a specific threshold or still placed in the optimal set of sensors, it can still be selected. So, but I'm not very sure actually.
It's okay, no worries. I just had that small doubt. Okay, no worries. Everyone else from the audience would like to ask a question? All right, it's okay. Thank you so much, Yihan.
Thank you.
Again.